Okay, good morning. So last night we played session number 40 in the Joth campaigns. This is technically Blackfish Bay slash Joth, as Joth is the big city of these campaigns. And we've been playing the last year or so, year and a half of sessions, maybe 2 years of sessions in the Blackfish Bay area of the world. This was an area of the world um far removed from Joth, and had been safe from what's called the world wax, which had been encroaching upon the world and the area surrounding Joth and those regions. But of late, the wax has shown up in the north of this region of the world, and it is encroaching down and around. And we investigated why it was not encircling a place called Stony Lonesome, which is a tower that sits above a lake, the Lake of Talons. So there's the Lake of Talons, and at the north end is a climb up to a base tower that juts up above it all. There's a land bridge that connects on the east side, and there's a forest, etc., that winds around on the northwest side, etc. So we loaded up a couple sessions ago. We crossed the Lake of Talons. He dropped us off. We then investigated, found a tent, ended up in a fight in which we lost a couple of characters, but we defeated a henchman who had been kind of a pain in our side in a couple of sessions. We met his employer, Jacotus. Jacotus then quickly invited us to work for him and charged us with completing the job that they were all there to do, which was clean out Stony Lonesome of a band of goblins. He believes that some answers to the wax riddle, or the control of the wax, the world wax, Stony Lonesome could be a good headquarters for this. He had buried in the floor of the tent, in the ground, a large stone that emanates and radiates ribbons of matter that glows or is somewhat electrical, etc. And he claims this is what's keeping the wax from encroaching all the area around Stony Lonesome. We don't know any better. So we go up to investigate. We end up discovering that there are indeed goblins in this old fort, this old walled tower. We rescue Mud, Justin's character, who is staked in the center, tied to a pole, where he is basically target practice for goblins or entertainment for goblins. My character Sarah, the cleric, she climbs over, cuts him free, and then is unfortunately killed immediately by a dire wolf that is guarding the whole area. But they managed to escape, and they managed to go back down to Jacotus. And this was in session 38, 39. They go back down to Jacotus, and they meet my next character, Ibsen, a tall, lanky magic user. And they regroup, discuss what we're going to do, and then we decide on a plan to go in a back way into the bowels of the old tower that Mud happens to know about from his previous foray into this tower when he was originally captured. We devise a plan to concoct a poison, and my character pulls mushrooms from the edge of the lake, and we spend a day fishing, trying to get meat. And at the same time, I was spent the day cooking this down to a poison. That poison was then deposited into my water skin, and we headed into the caves of Stony Lonesome, underneath Stony Lonesome. And that was where session 39 came to a close. We did get in. In 39, we did get in. We did come through a not quite past. Yeah, he had not been quite this far, I think. But we did get in. We came to an old set of cells. In those cells was a zombie, which we actually sicked upon the goblin jailer. Then we finished off the zombie, and then we freed one of Mud's old comrades, Virat. Vorat, I think, Barat. We gave him a dagger, and Mud took the jailer's keys. We grabbed a lantern off the wall, and curtains draw in session 39. So last night, session 40, weeks overdue, because I've been wanting to get back to this for weeks. It was wonderful. Um, I was having bad internet most of yesterday afternoon and all night last night, so I kept getting disconnected from Discord and Roll20. Um, Sometimes I had to actually quit out completely. I had to actually kill out completely and try to reboot. Fortunately, most of that stopped by game time, but I would still get disconnected, so I'd lose sound. They couldn't hear me, I couldn't hear them, and then it would find itself. It would eventually reconnect. But this went on for like the first hour, maybe the first hour of the session. So it delayed the start of the session a little bit because I think they were waiting for me to get my stuff together, and they did ultimately get started. And then everything went great. And I would say the last 35, 40 minutes of the session, I don't think I had many disconnects, or if I did, they were brief, thank God. So that was a little irritating for me. I mean, it was with the storm. We had a huge storm roll through the region yesterday, and a lot of wind yesterday afternoon, and it affected, for some reason of late, it's been affecting my internet. It didn't used to. Um, we had this happen 2 weeks ago for the whole city, and they had found damaged cables for that. So I'm wondering if there are more damaged cables or if this is the same problem. But uh, I'm on a municipal, so our city actually pays for high speed, or it's a municipal high speed internet, which we locked in before they actually planted in the ground and hooked us all up. I was one of the people who signed up for it, so I got it locked in for a set amount of money for basically the rest of my life. But it's high speed internet, and it's municipal produced, which is very cool. And they're underground cables. So unfortunately, so it's always been reliable and fast until recently. So something has occurred when they've hit it when they dug something up. Again, it's not what this is about. This is a recap, reflections of our continued long running campaigns using old school essentials. And Todd is our game master, right? And in this session was David as Lauren back, and Lauren he has been a survivor. Lauren is a pretty formidable character in that he has survived, and he struck down the big bodyguard in session 38 and or 39. And so might have been 38. I can't remember now. Anyway, but we've seen Lauren for a long time now. It seems like a long time. When characters live through 2 or 3 sessions, it seems like they're becoming vets, right? So we have Lauren. We have Mud, who is a reprised old character of Justin's. So that's cool. So this is one of Justin's old character chronologically, however, a fairly young character as far as his experience, I believe. And then we have Dell as Canavan returning, and Canavan's managed to survive for 2 or 3 sessions, right? So looking good. And Dell's, I think Todd said he was an elf. I didn't know he was an elf, right? So that's kind of neat. So we've got Canavan. And then, of course, we've got John as George the Liar returning, which is good because he had been very busy for the last month. So very cool to have him back. And then, of course, myself as Ibsen. Okay, let me see here. Where do we go? So again, we ended up taking the lantern off the wall, the keys off the dead goblin. Something went afoul on our side, on my side, so I did not hear how they got started. I did not hear it exactly, but when I was able to log back in and got Roll20 back up, they had already moved around the corner and into the main room where there were barrels lining the edge of the wall, and there's a pit that would collapse. This is where Mud and his crew had fallen and gotten captured. We discovered in the barrels, which were hollow, and it was just a bit funky. The barrels themselves were a bit funky. We found that along the north wall, I think it was the north wall or the east wall, one of the barrels, the bottom barrels, had a lock in it and a little door. And so we were able to use the jailer keys to pop that open. It was a crawl space that crawled itself around the edge of the pit through the fake barrel. They're basically hollow barrels. It was kind of like a hidden passage that went through barrels along the walls. Mud, of course, being the thief, led the way, got to the other side, no problem, was able to open the door on the other side, and think he got out. Yeah, he did. He was able to get out there into another chamber. We all then followed suit. And there are doors there. And so we spent a while trying to push these doors open. We had a heck of a time with some heavy old doors in this particular area of the caverns of the bowels of this tower. We managed to not get it open. So finally, Ibsen, in frustration, literally knocked on the door and called. Basically, somebody was on the other side of those doors, and it roused them. They came over in Goblin, asked, obviously for the by name, the jailer. I, being able to understand Goblin, spoke back. Yeah, I forgot my keys, and he opened the door for us. And very, very quickly, the angry Virat waylaid this goblin and put him down, basically in a very violent and brutal fashion. As I described for Virat, I was charged with rolling for Virat in this particular situation, so I described Virat's dispatching of this goblin with his anger and vengeance and frustration. He'd been locked up in the cells, and who knows what he'd gone through and seen. And so I described it as such, a man angry at these goblins. And they all backed away and gave Virat a healthy clearance at that point, right? So we continue further. We come to, I'm trying to remember now because I kept dropping in and out. So sometimes I would miss like what Justin was saying or something, which, just sucks for me. They were having a great time, but again, my internet. So we wind our way through the bowels. We come to some stairs. We climb those stairs. We come into another room, and there's a couple of statues in here, and we're investigating around here. We find a table with a weapon on it and some old chainmail. Mud recognizes this chainmail belonged to one of his members of his old crew, a female named Talia. Clearly, her armor here, her mace damaged here, a sword here, so Bharat slid on the chain shirt and took up the sword, and now Virat is even more ready to go. This NPC that we've rescued from the cages, right, from the jail cells. Then we come to there's a statue there in an alcove, and we're investigating this little area rooms, like two rooms, like a kind of a wide hallway with a table, and then into another room, and there's a statue there, and we all investigate this thing and look at this thing, and finally George slips behind it, and he can see through a hole in the rocks and rubble that this is like a false wall in a way. It's like it's like a doorway or false wall here. So we all turn our attention to moving this statue, and eventually we're able to heave this statue and shift it off its foundations, and it allows this space really to get in and through the door. So it's almost like we needed to get out of the way to get through. But it shifts off its foundations, we slide it, and it leads to a stairwell up. Again, Mud, doing what he should do, right? Scout ahead as the thief in the dark, climbs these stairs safely, gets to the top, and finds another oublet, right? A door in the ceiling, and calls down to us. And we, of course, all make our way up the stairs, except for Canavan. Canavan lingers behind at like every room, keeping his eye on what's behind. And oh yeah, I forgot, as we were coming into this area, there was a area of the wall, natural area of the wall that had collapsed in and left like almost like a tunnel. And my character went over with the torch and looked down this tunnel and saw something gleam back. I handed my lantern to Mud, and I wiggled down into this and was able to use my rope and hook this thing and kind of pull it to make sure. I didn't want it to find out it was trapped. And sure enough, it pulled loose like a gem. I reeled it in, and sure enough, I found this gem. However, wafting up from further down was a putrid smell, kind of a reptilian kind of putrid smell. So I quickly wiggled out of this area, showed the gem to everybody. We've at least got this thing. Then we find the table with the armor, etc. Right. So Canavan at this point is definitely keeping an eye on what's behind us, and they buried in again. I lost contact. We came back when I heard them finishing that they buried that hole. So the rest of the crew smartly kind of piled rocks and everything into that hole. But I only know that I heard the end of that. So we then made our way through those rooms, found this statue, moved it, and up the stairs to an oubliette. And we began the process of trying to push this door open. And as you can imagine, it was a hell of a thing. We finally got it pushed up enough that David's character, Lauren, could look about. And what he sees first is that there is natural light entering the room. And he can see it's coming through some broken down walls, like cement walls or stone walls. Excuse me, not cement, stone. And hanging off on the edge there is a, for lack of a better term, what's left of an arm. And Mud immediately says, we can use that. We could use that to, to poison the dire wolf. So part of our goal was to poison, was to get it. And so my character snatches the arm and pulls it, not knowing if it's attached to a torso. Fortunately, it is just the arm. We get it in to the space. And you can see all these guys crammed into this space. Two guys trying to hold up the oubliette, and Mud and I are putting the poison on this thing. They then lift it back up, and I stick the arm through and I wiggle it around, and sure enough, we can hear the panting and the snarling of the wolf. It pounces on the hand, rips it away from me, but in doing so, it slams down the oubliette, and we listen as we can hear it devouring. And my character tells everybody it should take about 5 minutes. Again, this was a intelligence check. Do I know how long it may take to kill this creature? I'd successfully make the intelligence check. Todd says, you think maybe 5 minutes. So we wait until we hear nothing. And then we attempt to open the oubliette again, and unfortunately, it's half on it, so it's very, very heavy. We manage again to lift it enough that I can put the old mace head. So that she wielded a mace with a black mace with a black mare's head on it. That was the mace head, and it had been broken and left on the floor. Canavan found that in the dark, brought it to me, and I used it to when they got it lifted open, I could sconch that open with the head of the mace, which we did. Only enough space, though, for George the liar to wiggle out. He wiggles out, finds the wolf there, dying maybe, but it was still breathing. He quickly coup de grace the wolf, letting, bloodletting from the main artery of the wolf. He then lifts it off the oubliette. We climb out, and we are now in this fairly large broken down chamber of this fortress. The roof covered, but some of the walls broken in. We can look out, we can see into the courtyard, we can recognize where we're at. We hear a horn blast in the tower behind us. And we, at that point, after investigating the area quickly, we head through those open doors. Not open, there are two doors. We push those open toward the tower. They're kind of cattywampus to the courtyard, but they kind of face the tower, across from the tower. We push that open about the same time we hear screams and fighting in the tower above. So something has gone awry in the tower above, and there's clanging of weapons. There's a melee going on above us. We hear screams and cries and hulking from the hole. One of the towers, maybe 20 feet, 30 feet up, there's a giant hole in the side of the tower. Flung from that and splatting in the courtyard is, for the lack of a better term, what's left of a creature, a hulking. All that's left of the creature is its skin, its shell. So it's like a meat sack with no bones, right? So splatting is this, and it's bigger than man. So I believe George or Mud quickly assess that could be the hobgoblin. That could be I think it was a hobgoblin. It might have been a bugbear. I can't remember what was in control of the dire wolf when we met the dire wolf, but there was a hobgoblin leader, I think. So they quickly assessed. There may be more, right? We're assuming there's one hobgoblin. Yeah, there could have been more. So who knows? Anyway, it's bigger than a man. So we assess, oh man, what the hell did that? And that is where, and then David starts to head across to the tower doors, and we fade to black, and it was fantastic. This was straight dungeon crawl. So I've been making videos, those who watch, about Moldvay and D&D circa 1980, and what those rules mean, and what a dungeon crawl, is, and what I think basic D&D was ultimately about. And Todd, I think, has taken it to heart. So Todd really uh, did some things last night that were pretty hardcore adherence to dungeon crawling rules, which was kind of, cool. I mean, not to say Todd doesn't, but it was like, oh cow, he's counting. I mean, he literally, we had torches burn out. We had a lantern go out. It was amazing. So again, I didn't make the videos for Todd. I was making the videos about Moldvay D&D, and if you were to play at strict adherence, these things are kind of fascinating. And I had a great time. It again, part of why you choose to play an old school game is for those experiences, and it was fantastic. It's always been fantastic, though. I wouldn't be playing years and in I don't know how many sessions, and if I didn't think this was a fantastic experience, and so I love it. Um, I love basic fantasy. I love and this is just my bailiwick. This is just the thing that I do, and uh, all that entails. There is going to be meta in gaming, right? And when I say gaming, I mean the part of the role play game is gaming, and gaming requires out of character meta chatter, and I am okay with that. I've always been okay with that. It doesn't mean the game has to be a joke. It doesn't have to mean that we beer and pretzel it and treat it, you know, lightly. But I'm with friends, and I'm going to enjoy my company with my friends, and we're going to I mean, that's what this is. It's a social event. I'm going to enjoy it. And we role play, and we enjoy the hell out of this group. I think we all like each other. I think we all enjoy and immensely what Todd does and what Todd provides. And we get to enjoy, you know, OSE, which harkens back to that particular set of rules. And it does so very, very well. And so last night was really cool. We dungeon crawled, but Todd's always done these crawls very well. I mean, I have had no complaints. It was nice, though, that he actually demanded we rest. I mean, it was amazing. Todd did a great job. Again, I had not done myself, and maybe ever, right? I mean, I talk about this, but Todd GMs like I do. And which means some of that stuff we'd adhere to when we could remember it, or if we wanted to, or if people were committed to it. And sometimes we didn't. I think you go with the feel of the group. You go with the how people want to enjoy the thing, right? Practice is always different than theory. So when I make these videos discussing gaming, game design, and role play, game theory, etc., it is just that. It is theory. And it's very easy and it's part of what I love about the hobby. I design games. I love to break games down and dissect them. And so it's only natural for me to treat a book, for instance, as a textbook, to treat a book, for instance, as a technical manual. And what is it that says versus how it feels, and what do we do with it? And so theory is always different than practice. I've said before, academia, right? Those who teach and live in an ivory tower, they have the luxury of teaching theory. They have the luxury of teaching absolutes, right? They have a luxury of teaching, right? And hopefully from that, people learn critical thinking, and they learn to read, and they learn to take in other information, and they learn to think for themselves. And that's what hopefully higher education does for people, right? It teaches them to educate themselves on everything, and then think critically about all the information you get, learn how to do your own research, et cetera, et cetera. That's what higher education should do for people. And I hope. But the reality is, uh, any insular environment removes you sometimes from actual practice. What is it like to really run a business as opposed to teach a business class, right? Teaching the theories of business and how it's all supposed to function. It ain't the same as running a restaurant. I know, we owned a restaurant. I know the truth of business, and the business um, concepts are true. Actual business is another animal, right? So, and laws and things like that require that you follow them for labor and for et cetera, et cetera. Those are all true, or you're going to end up in trouble, or you're going to end up sued, or whatever, right? So those things are true. But talking about business in classes is not the same as running a business, right? It's not the same as employees. It's not the same as scheduling. It's not, it's everything falls on you, right? So I've said before, I love discussing game design, game theory, theory of role playing, how to role play better. Why do we even care whether we're in character or out of character? And I've said it before, I like in character as character play, but I can do that and talk out of character. I can do that and talk about my character in third person. It does not change my investment in my what my party's doing and what my GM's telling me and what we're about to encounter or are encountering. And I think that's easy for me, right? That hasn't stopped me from experimenting with the ideas of what if we do everything in the first person. I've run a session where I said we did a dungeon crawl years ago again on the basic fantasy with a big group in the dark. They had to hear, and I told them that any of their chatter, in character out, will be considered by me actual conversation between the players. So when they hero huddled and they talked about things, I said, be aware, creatures could hear this, right? So I told them everything they say to each other, whether they mean it or not, I will treat that as actual conversation between characters in first person, and therefore, right? And when they would ask me a direct question, I said, I will treat your direct questions to me as thoughts in your head, right? That's how I treat it. So when Dell would say, well, can I see what's in that room? Obviously I process that as Dale thinking to himself, what's in that room and looking. So I would treat that as internal dialogue questions to me, and I would give him a response as to what he sees when he looks. But I warned them, any chatter, hero huddles, chatters, etc., alive, and monsters can hear that, right? So be aware of how loud you're talking to each other, etc. Or if you don't want to whisper because it's hard online to do, then tell me you're whispering to Bill. Bill, I think there's a trap door there, right? Tell me you're whispering to Bill if you don't want to whisper, right? If you don't want to be in character, so to speak. And so I love that, and I like to do those kind of experimental games. I've played games with the old Thursday night group where our goal was to use game terms and not numbers, right? Our goal is to use hard and easy for difficult checks, and I think it was Ubiquity game, and our goal in that was to use the terms that would trigger those roles, et cetera, and that was great fun. Can we do this? Communicating in unison using the language of the game, which I always try to do, right? I'm okay with saying roll initiative because it's the language of the game. And all role playing is about communication, successful communication with a group of 3 to 8 people. There's nothing wrong with using the language of the game. Roll initiative. It's nothing wrong with that. And it becomes a t-shirt, right? Roll initiative. I love it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There are those who want to escape completely into this, and that's fine, right? There's a level of immersion for some people that they want to remove anything that takes them out of that, and that's cool too. But you can master this and be so fluent in the language of the game that I'm immersed even when a GM says it's time to roll initiative, right? I'm immersed. I'm fully aware of the danger my character's about to go into. I'm fully aware that, did he just say we counted 12 heads of skeletons rushing us? I'm aware what 12 skeletons rushing a party of 4 means in this cavern, right? I'm well aware. I'm well immersed, right? I'm well immersed. So anyway, great games. But it was kind of cool that Todd, I hope to gosh, these guys don't take personally what I talk about in these things. I'm literally talking about D&D Moldvay as a rule set, but it was very cool to see Todd say, yeah, let's try that. And brilliant, fantastic. So love it. And cannot wait for the next one, right? I will say this, Dell won't like it. I could do this, every session I play could involve D20 old school, could involve sword and wizardry, could involve fantastic medieval adventures, basic fantasy, labyrinth lord, any D20 OSR or old D&D books would suffice for me for the rest of my life. When I first came back, as we were trying to wrap up Dark Age of Man, and I told Dell, dude, I mean, I could literally, once this game is finished, and we of course play it and share it and teach it and do what we do to support our products. I could see myself, if we didn't finish this, or if we finished it and it is what it is, playing nothing but the D20 for the remainder of my days, because I enjoy it. Um, I like new games. I like to break down new games. I like to experience new stuff. But as I age, I realize that the amount of time I have with friends and the amount of time we have during the week or the month or whatever, you want to kind of have that choice experience. And that choice experience for me is, I see in character, as character role play, but the actual game system that I would use is the one that sparks it, that checks all the boxes. And not to say Dark Age of Man does not, but Dark Age of Man, we purposely simplified all of this minutia. It's more, again, uh, uh, player driven, player agency, and things are dealt with simple die rolls. So there's pieces of games that, if you love those mechanisms, I mean, I guarantee you there are guys who love 2D20 Conan and all of that, and that entails. And the mechanisms of 2D20 Conan are part of what inspired them. They don't get in the way of why they love the thing. That's why they're there. It inspires them. There are people who love mechanisms. There's people who love complicated games because they're different, right? We're all different. And I have enjoyed that part of 2D20 games, and I've enjoyed that part of more complicated games. But, and I'm not, tropes, cliches, repetition be damned. Uh, I don't care. There is something inspirational to me of being low-level characters dealing with stony keeps, dark dungeons, goblins, skeletons. I don't care, right? I don't care how many times I do it. Uh, it's for me, there's a sweet spot there for me, right? Anyway, that's enough of that. I've waxed poetic. But anyway, I want to thank Todd again, another fantastic session. And I want to say, pulling those pieces of the rules in, the torch ticking down, having to take our rest on our sixth turn, rat food and rations, uh, counting of arrows when we get there, right? That stuff matters. And I'm going to tell you, we were aware of it. I mean, it made us all humbly aware that we're down to one more torch. Oh, we have one more lantern. And you start worrying about, because when they go out, we're in the bowels of, there's no light. We would have to fumble around everything at a minus. I think everything is at a -4, like combat's all at a -4. It's incredibly dangerous, and you would be feeling your way through the utter darkness, and have no clue what you're touching. You have no clue where you're stepping on. It would be amazing, and it would be horrific. But the reality is, how Todd would describe those things would be so limiting to us. We would be desperate to get out of there, right? And it did heighten the edge. It heightened, in a way. At some point, we would have had to pick up the pace and forgo worrying about traps, worried about being ambushed. We were able to do this at a crawl, so we were trying to keep our wits about us. But at some point, when we got down to that last torch, the last lantern, we would have had to change pace. We would have had to have pushed forward without investigating. So we were lucky to find that oubliette when we did, because we were down to the final lantern, and the lantern we found had been burning, we don't know how long. So we got out of there just in time. But boy, it heightens the entire experience. Um, and again, this is coming from a guy who spent his entire career GMing these games, kind of hand waving those rules, right? Not that you need torches. I would tell people you need torches, and I would remind them when the torch flickered, it might go out. But I wasn't strict about ticking that time. And so therefore, they didn't always feel that kind of pressure. Um, because I thought those administrative tasks were a pain in the ass, and because, and I guess to a lot of teams they are. That's why we go to hacks, right? Hacks say just make a roll to see if the torch goes out. It works, but then it's utterly random, and there is this sense that, oh yeah, the roll itself becomes this: you hold your breath to see if the torch goes out, but it doesn't feel as organic as knowing your torch has a limited amount of time. There's something very organic about knowing we've lit a torch and we know it's burning now, right? And time actually becomes real. When you roll a die to determine if a torch goes out, there's no real sense of time passing, right? Especially if your torch could go out on the first roll, right, or something. So, but I understand why GMs homebrewed these things, because ticking these things, tracking these things is administrative. It can be a real pain in the arse, right? So I appreciate it, Todd. I mean, I know it's more work, so it did not fall on deaf ears here, right? It did not fall on. I do not take it for granted. It was great, and I appreciate it. All right, everybody, have a great day.